You know that saying, form follows function? Well, today we're throwing that out the window and I'm building a somewhat impractical coffee table. So a buddy of mine lives in a pretty small apartment and he's been asking me to make him a suitably sized coffee table for a while now. The main constraint being that it can't be too wide. I think we settled on around 12 inches. And I only had a couple days to get it done, so I wanted to keep it pretty simple. I also didn't have a lot of lumber on hand, so I didn't have a lot to choose from. But I had one 5/4 walnut board that was about 9 inches wide, so I decided to get a little creative to get to that desired width. So after I milled the board, the first step was to cut everything to length, and I also filled any imperfections at this point before moving on to anything else. I had a few iterations of how I was going to widen the board, but sticking with the idea of keeping it pretty simple, I landed on this kind of stitched, laced look. So I thought about setting up a router jig to cut all these slots along the length of the table. But then I remembered I have a guy that works here and he's really good at stuff like this. Hey Greg, do you think this is something you can do? So I put together the whole design in easel, which was quick and easy. It was really just a matter of getting the spacing and the sizing right so that it looked proportional with the whole coffee table. The only tricky part here was that the board was longer than my CNC table size. So I had to do the cut in 2 sections, which just meant that I had to flip it around halfway through and do the same cut again. So now that I had all these slots cut, all I had to do was take each part and cut them right down the middle. I then made all the little cross pieces that would hold the 2 halves together, and I needed the finished dimension on these to be 3/8 of an inch wide by a 1/2 inch deep. So I cut a bunch of long strips of scrap maple to just over these dimensions. I then used my drum sander to get them to a nice fit in each slot, as well as leaving them just slightly proud of the top, which could then be sanded flush after the glue up. I then cut them all to equal length. And at this point, any scrap left over from these was of course thrown away from downtown. The last thing to do on these cross pieces was to round each end so that it matched the radius of the router bit that cut the slots. And I just did this by hand with my belt sander. finally I could glue them all in place, which wasn't necessarily a difficult process, it was just pretty tedious. Then once everything was dry, I could send it all through the drum sander to get the top nice and flat and everything flush. I also added a bevel on the bottom side because we all know that the bevel is in the details. And finally, I could cut the 45-degree miters on the ends of each part, then just cut in a few dominoes and do the final glue up. I'll spare you the sanding footage because it was excruciatingly tedious, but once everything was nice and smooth, I got some finish on there and we were pretty much done. So there you go, a somewhat impractical coffee table. It keeps you on your toes. We already have a lot of furniture that's made for relaxing, so why not build something that stresses you out a bit? Anyways, thank you to Greg, my X-Carve machine. Thank you to Inventables for putting me in touch with Greg. If you want to learn more about Inventables or Greg, of course, links are in the description. And thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know if you think this is a stupid coffee table. And until next time, just remember, when it comes to furniture, form following function maybe isn't the best, so make yourself a coffee table that keeps you consistently stressed.